Allegations included theft and sexual assault. Drinks companies have been accused of trying to water down government proposals for a deposit return scheme to improve rates of bottle recycling. Industry lobbyists say it should apply only to small on-the-go bottles, but environmentalists argue that all sizes should be covered. Train companies say they want a complete overhaul of the way rail tickets are bought and sold in Britain. The industry body, the Rail Delivery Group, says the current ticketing system is outdated and overcomplicated. It's proposing more flexible fares and an automated ticketing system like London's Oyster card across the whole country.
It is now 27 minutes to 7. Mrs May is off to Brussels again on Wednesday. She's promised to speak to the leaders of every EU member state this week. Norman Smith is our assistant political editor. And tell her more, Norman.
That she still believes she can get a deal through the House of Commons despite last week's defeat if EU leaders manage to agree to some sort of changes to the backstop. But I mean, there's an awful sense of familiarity about this. It feels, very much like another Brexit Monday with an awful lot of talking and meeting, but not really any signs yet of progress or anything remotely resembling a breakthrough. So Mrs May will talk to EU leaders. Steve Barclay, the Brexit Secretary, travels to Brussels to see Mr Barnier, will again set out the three ideas which the British government have got of legal guarantees either on an exit mechanism or an exit date, or this other idea of relying on customs procedures and technology to get round a hard border. But I'm told there's no one particular proposal on the table, although intriguingly Mr Barclay apparently is taking the Attorney General Geoffrey Cox with him to Brussels, and he'll be making a speech tomorrow setting out the sort of legal clarification we would need on the backstop. And I suspect that will fuel a view in some sections of the Tory party that Mrs May is not going to be able to secure a reopening of the withdrawal agreement, and therefore may have to move towards looking at accepting some sort of memorandum, addendum, codicil, call it what you will, bolted on to the withdrawal treaty.
She's got to persuade her friends in Westminster, if they are friends any longer in Westminster, to accept that.
She does. And the European Research Group to date have said there have to be changes to the withdrawal agreement itself. Any other sort of legal assurance would be secondary to what is in the treaty and therefore would not be sufficient. All of which said, the European Research Group, although very organised, very disciplined, is not a homogenous, unyielding block. There are different fissures and fractures within its ranks, and I know I've spoken to some of the fairly hard-line Brexiteers who say, well, actually, if we got the thumbs up from the Attorney General that the sort of legal assurances being offered were sufficient, even if they're not in the withdrawal treaty, then yes, perhaps that would be enough. So that may be a route Mrs May could go down.
Sorry, a very quick thought, if you would, about Labour splitting.
Nothing confirmed yet. There is, I think, a strong possibility that between 4 and 6 Labour MPs could today decide to not set up and form another party, but resign the party whip and set as an independent group. I mean, what kind of leads me to think that is there's just been radio silence from the people involved. I texted them this morning to ask whether I should be dousing this all down, and I've not received any reply, and I rather think if it was baloney they would tell me. Of course, they may just be asleep, but I think there's a chance
at this time of day, Norman. It's a filthy rumour out there, but thank you, Norman.
Old political correspondents' trick. When they go silent, they're about to do something. Almost always the case. It is 23 minutes to 7. Facebook knowingly and intentionally broke the law. They need to be regulated, and election law needs to be dramatically rewritten. Who says so? Well, the Commons Media Select Committee. Amal Rajan, our media editor, has been reading the report, hard-hitting Amal.
Yes, Nick, morning. It's really the most comprehensive look at the power, influence and culture of big technology companies that we've had in Britain so far. It's also probably the closest thing we have to America's Mueller inquiry, which looks at Russian interference in the presidential election. It's 108 pages, 18 months long, and I've got to say, Facebook is very, very grim reading. There's the allegation which Facebook will resist and have resisted, that they very intentionally broke different kinds of laws on data privacy, laws on competition. There's the now familiar claim that we need a new code of ethics backed up by an independent regulator, And I think that some of the most striking passages in the report are really about the fact that electoral law, which is this attempt to protect voters from misleading advertising, or indeed to make sure voters know where advertising comes from, hasn't left the age of billboards and pamphlets through letterboxes and caught up with the age of Facebook and Twitter. So it's very wide and broad in scope, and we'll expect to hear from Facebook today, but there's no doubt we've entered a world now, Nick, where the consensus politically is that the era of self-regulation by technology firms has got to be over.
Some of what matters about this is about the future changes to the law. Some is about the past, though, Amol, isn't it? The allegation, which the committee seems to back up, that there was wrongdoing in the Brexit referendum that still is nowhere near getting to the bottom of.
Yes, there is this, I mean, we're familiar now with the scandal around Cambridge Analytica, which goes back some years. The committee looked in detail at whether or not the Brexit referendum was also subject to foreign interference, and they say they find strong evidence that it most likely was. It's worth saying that on that particular point they aren't completely definitive. They haven't completely identified what that interference would be, but there is a feeling now, which I think is shared not just by the committee, but even at the top of some of these technology companies, that they have unleashed something that they cannot control, Nick. That there is such a huge amount of activity on these platforms that there are always going to be bad actors, and that frankly the technology isn't up to making sure that those bad actors stay out of the business of voters when it comes to a referendum or indeed an election.
Amal Rajan, thank you. We're going to be talking to Carol Cadwallader, who has exposed a lot of what's been happening on Facebook in a few minutes' time, and others throughout the programme.
21 minutes to 7 now. Shamima Begum has had her baby in a camp in Syria and has done another interview with Sky in which she said this country should show her some sympathy. Daniel Sanford's our Home Affairs correspondent. What's the chance of that, Daniel?
It's hard to judge at the moment what they're saying. There's clearly quite a lot of reluctance by politicians to reach out a hand of assistance to her. Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary, making it clear that if anything they would want to prevent people who've gone off to join terrorist organisations coming home. There was a chink of light yesterday when Jeremy Wright, the Culture Secretary but former Attorney General, said that he thought that as she was likely to only have British citizenship, then perhaps she would at some point be allowed back into the country. What her family are asking from the government for is some paperwork. She doesn't have a passport, and clearly the baby doesn't have any paperwork. They're saying, if you give us some paperwork to help us cross borders, we'll arrange for somebody to go and get her out, and then allow her to come back to Britain under you, the British government and police's control, and then you can do what you wish with her, but we would just like to get our new grandchild home.
Right. And the likelihood is that one way or the other she will get back to this country.
I think it won't happen fast, but I'm not sure that in the end she's going to be allowed to languish in northern Syria for months and months and years. She's of course not the only one there, and I think